Okay, welcome to Seattle Boat Show. Michael Beemer. We're going to talk a little bit about batteries and what I do, and I'll try and reserve a little time at the end for your questions. And of course, this is going out to all sorts of people who couldn't be here on Dog Day. Doggy's on deck, but it's always an interesting and a favorite topic of mine, you know, about cruising boats and batteries. And so I teach up at Skagit Valley College. There's a marine tech program up there. We actually have a high school program and a college program, and we are desperately teaching people. We need people, but we're teaching people how to fix boats, which is good. I tell them there's a lot of people that you can take money from. So they're going to need their boats fixed. So let's do that. And it's a great facility. We offer weekend programming for boat owners. If you haven't heard of us, there's a website, cruiserscollege.org. You can jump in and check that stuff out. So, okay. But I want to talk about today just a quick synopsis of batteries and how it's changing and what advice I can give to you for your boat. Batteries are, of course, they're pivotal in the marine marketplace for our boats, for our enjoyment. And so unless you're, a boat that runs a generator 24/7, we all need batteries, and we need to understand them. So how are you going to monitor? How are you going to find out what's available? Any sailboaters out here? That's good. I like to know where the cheapskates are. I'll tell you where the best value is, okay? And some new lead stuff. Lithium's a hot topic, of course. It has been. I'm doing this because as I train technicians, my primary job, my hat is electrical, and our lab's full of batteries, and we're always doing fun experiments and chopping them up and, what's good, what's bad. We are also refitting a 39-foot west sail, which we're targeting for a 7-year circumnavigation. If you want to build an electrical system that's going to work, let's start with the hardest thing to crack right there, right? Let's use that for our model to see if it's going to work. And so that's all things that I do. I've got a solid track record in the battery lab. We've only had the fire department there like once, maybe twice, I don't know. But boats are just compromises, and you got to understand that. And the other thing is technology is happening very, very quickly, right? We now have electric cars zipping all over the freeways, and that just wasn't the case not too long ago. So all this hubbub and everything that's happening, my biggest message is if your batteries can make it a year or two right now, wait. There's just a lot going on in our industry, and we are learning so much so fast. It's like when my brother-in-law bought an Apple IIe computer in 1983, and I bought the Commodore 64, and when you're on the cutting edge, you're paying a lot of money, and if you would wait a few years, it might pay off. So really assess what you have right now, and think about where you want to go before you get the checkbook out and start spending a lot of money on your battery system. So I'm learning stuff every day. The biggest question I get when somebody comes in and wants to build a cruising boat and a battery bank electrical system is, a lot of times they have no idea really where they're at, what they need, the interaction. So before we can talk about batteries, if you are going to rely on a battery bank to keep your boat happy, to keep the diesel furnace running, they use a lot of energy. To keep the beer cold, your refrigerator working, electrical, the lights on, how much are you using, how much do you need, and how do you interact? And that's a whole class on itself. But before you buy batteries, you've got to have a decent battery monitor. You need to know state of charge that's your SOC, on your main battery bank. That's the only way you're going to get extended life or be happy with the purchase of new batteries. So I haven't brand indifferent. I'm not selling anything. I can't tell you this is better than that, better than that. Started with Link 10. Back from, hard interface when those two knuckleheads left the Caribbean and built the inverter company. That thing still works fine. It's 20 years old. It tells you where your batteries are at. So get something. If I'm a big fan of Victron Energy, I have to be honest. I like the blue. I think it's the color. It's good marketing. But you got to have a battery monitor. And once we know where our electrical system is at, then we can talk about the batteries and what's powering up behind it. There's some other really good resources out there for this whole idea of creating a balanced electrical system. And once again, it's really difficult. I have customers who come to me, or students now, I don't work in the trades anymore, but who have, a simple sailboat and they want to keep the refrigerator running. Perfect. And I've got people on big twin engine motorboats that come to us and say, hey, Beemer, my wife wants to cook a pot roast in the oven, electric. We're scared of propane and we don't want to start a generator. Oh, can we do that? Yes, we can. Comes with a big price tag, but we can do it. So this whole gamut of so you have to figure out what is your balanced electrical need. I did a thing with Bruce Schwab. Ocean Planet Energy is a great company we work with. He's out in Anacortes periodically. They're based out of Maine. And we went through and figured out, because I go to these different events and they're like, I can't believe you let your wife use an electric skillet, an electric ice maker, an Instapot, and all these things. Doesn't that kill the batteries? Not really. It's part of a balanced system. And so we went through and actually put in an amp hour figure, how many kilowatt hours each of those could take. And it's shockingly low. Ice cubes for my gin and tonic, 11 amp hours. Broccoli beef in an Instapot is like 20 if it's a small one. And so we went through and documented that. And Nigel started a website, a class. He's got some calculators on there and things you can do. And if you really want to dive deep, I don't get any kickbacks from him. I mean, I might get a pint of beer if I'm lucky. But I could not partner with him, even though this is my favorite topic and I love teaching. There just wasn't enough time in the day. But Boat How To is a really good resource for understanding electrical systems. So shout out to him and his textbook that all my students have to buy. What's available? We put his son and daughter through college by buying those books, all of us collectively. So that's a good deal for his kids. What's available, basically old school wet cells, been around. All these new sealed batteries, I'm just going to clunk into one category, and then lithium. And at this point, we're still really talking about iron phosphate, lithium. They're getting close to cracking the nut to potentially getting to some of the metal ones to be safe enough for boats. Don't know yet. They're good for drones. The energy density is amazing, but once again, we're on that cusp. So those are the things that are available. And just briefly, I'm going to rip through what those look like, and then we'll just dive a little bit deeper into what I've learned about them. So basically, wet cell lead, we're talking about, and once again, I've got a picture of a dyno. Doesn't mean it's better than a Trojan, okay? It's just their batteries, and how you treat them and take care of them is a big, big deal. But anyways, then you've got some high-end flooded batteries, your Rolls and Surrettes, and I had a set of those on my boat for like 10 years, still tested at 75%. So there's some high-end lead. But then the really high-end is when we get into all of our different sealed stuff. And this is, Victron and Lifelines and Odysseys and Full Rivers, and it goes on and on and on and on. Those are high-end leads that we could talk about. There's Victron's got a bunch of new stuff out. The Firefly Oasis is out there. Carbon, blue tops, super cyclers. Okay, those are all available, so we can talk about those today. And then we get into this whole idea of lithium drop-in. And this is the huge buzz that goes around, and I'll probably irritate somebody before the day's up, but that's okay. But they're there, right? This is just a power to box, supposedly put it in your boat and sail off into the sunset. So there's lots of those available. And then we're going to wrap it up with the integrated lithium system. So this is a full-on converting my boat to an awesome power platform with a whole bunch of technology that needs to go with it. And so that's what you can expect pretty soon here, and I'm pretty versed at answering questions about all of those. So how long can they last? I mentioned 10 years. I know a client got 14 years out of some gel batteries. You know, you used to be able to buy NiCads, big ones for your boat. I know somebody sailed around the world with a set of, you know, nickel cadmium batteries, you know, just can be done. So they can last a long time, but my lab is full of batteries. We can destroy them very quickly. I've got a dyno battery that we chopped up that had 3 cycles on it, $200 battery, 3. And no amount of magic, space dust, pixie could bring it back from the dead. Because we used it twice and they let it go dead over summer when I was off sailing, 3 months later, kaputs, right? We had a northern marine boat. Somebody set the battery charger on the wrong little switch. Boop. These look like traction batteries. That should be totally fine. 2 years out of the battery bank, $20,000. Poof, cooked. Scrap lead, okay? So we can kill them very, very quickly. There's some general rules though. If you take care of your batteries, especially getting easier when you can buy a $200 battery charger, go on and Bluetooth it with your phone and tell it, do your magic, because the manufacturer has specifications. Us boat owners don't even need to know. Just go in there, right? Oh, I got full rivers. Boom, tell it to charge them. I got dynos. Charge them like that, and they'll take care of it. And then you can expect about 5 to 7 years out of wet cells. So sailboaters, take note. That's a great way to go. But anyways, AGMs for serviceability, they're going to run 7 to 10 years. We don't know about lithium yet. We've got some, very little use out of them that are dead. I chop some of those up in my shop too. It's a thing with us. We like chopping up batteries. But you know, also you got to remember that I am very jaded. Nobody calls me when they're super happy about their batteries. They call me when like, this doesn't work and this one's got ooze coming out of it, right? You know, that's what they, you know, when you're the boat doctor. I don't get the, wow, I just got 8 years out of these. This was the most perfect system ever. So, I mean, I do, but rarely. That's more my demographics. So I'm stuck down in the weeds of, in my world, if you look out here, every boat is broken down all the time, every year, continuously, and nobody's having any fun. Because we're mechanics, you know. So if you see me, by the way, up in an Anchorage, I got an award last year. Best thing ever happened in 10 years. A gentleman rowed up in a nice little, you know, dinghy, and handed my wife a bottle of wine. Said, you got the best looking boat in this Anchorage. Enjoy. And I was like, wow, that should happen more often. So anyways, so here's our old flooded batteries. Awesome, cheap. The problem is you have to maintain them. You got to get in and put distilled water in them. Okay? Now, if you go for 5 years and haven't added distilled water, you also have problems. They're going to die because they haven't been charged hard enough, because something is wrong. They're just sitting there, not very happy. So a proper flooded system should require water 2-3 times a year. You want to get in and hit them hard so they don't sulfate. And they're a lot less efficient. So the research out there, when you charge, you could take 2 different batteries. You could take like some Odyssey thin plate pure lead and your flooded dynos. And this battery, the flooded one, is only about 60% efficient. Because as you're charging it, 40% of the energy that you're pumping into there isn't energy you're going to get back out. It's heat and just waste. You go to the like a high-end thin plate pure lead battery, and they're like up in the 85%. So you're only losing. And when you get into lithium, it's like up into the 90s somewhere. You put it in, you take it out. So now, don't let that scare you. Who cares if they're 60% efficient? I crank up my little Yanmar and I'm driving along. As long as they get charged back up, who cares? I know when I anchor for 2 or 3 days, I got power to keep the boat happy. Okay? Now, although they're cheaper, there is a caveat. If you go in with, these are the best bang, I'm going to buy my Trojans, use them for 5 years, buy another set, use them for 5 years. If you're paying yard rates, 100 and some dollars an hour because you don't want to have your clothes full of holes and because you got a bad back and a bad shoulder, might pay off in the beginning to spend the extra money and have batteries that are going to last longer. Okay, so personal situations on every boat is so much different. And there's a huge shout out to all of us using lead. Lead is 95% recyclable. The automobile industry is pushing, or the lead-based battery people are pushing hard into the automobile world for regenerative braking and short-term storage because they want to boost the efficiencies of cars so they can keep selling them, and lead is so recyclable and cheaper. So at the end result, the throughput, lead is still a really good idea, okay? When you get to, oh, that's cut off. So thin plate pure lead is the one that was on top. So once you get into new technologies, we're kind of into some uncharted kind of territories because we don't have the 5 to 8 to 10 year research on all of these batteries. There's a new technology that I heard about where in the past, we would have to build a battery, send it to the lab, test it, build it, and then go in and tweak it, make changes. They now have the technology with, I don't know whether it's cameras, computers, and what they do, to be able to tweak the battery in real time, like in a big test lab, and find out real time what those changes are doing on the end result, which is bringing the cost of research down back to my, maybe we should wait if we can to buy these batteries. Thin plate pure lead have these high charge acceptance rates. So these are your Odysseys and your little spirals, your Optimas. Really good in certain situations. If I have a boat and the owner says, I want to run the engine for an hour, pound a bunch of energy into this battery, I don't want to buy lithium, then we're going to go with something that's got a bunch of plates and can absorb a ton of energy very quickly. The other ones that we have out there that there's been a ton of buzz are these Fireflies. And this is what I've been recommending for a number of years. I had a really good set of 4 that I ran through the ringer. And the beautiful thing about Fireflies is you could leave them set, partial state of charge, and they don't foul up. And I've got like $1,000 load test machine, right? And I mean, I've got real empirical data about these things. What we've learned, though, is all of our batteries, if they're lead, need to be fully charged like once a month at a minimum. 2 weeks is better. So if you're a full-time cruiser in the summertime and a cheapskate, sailboaters, pull into the marina, pay for a slip, plug in, and top your batteries off every few weeks when you're going between here and Alaska. It's really good for the batteries. Most of our boats don't have enough solar or wind, or we don't motor enough to really fully recharge those batteries. So that's a key point that we've learned. We've got, unfortunately, I just had 3 sets of Fireflies come back to my building that we started chopping up, the Group 31s, all kaputs. Some of them are getting warrantied. We don't know why. There's been a lot of, we don't know if they changed something in the formula or what's going on. But my favorite battery right now is giving me grief on these little ones. So I can't believe that's the same battery that I have used for the last 4 years perfectly, and in 1 year of almost no abuses kaputs. So I would hold off on those too for right now. Lifeline actually has been really good still. I find very few problems with them. And not to say that the Master Volt or any of the other ones are any better. It's just, we've got some really good stories about long-lived batteries. Can buy them anywhere in the world. We do our offshore sailing seminar coming up in March, and that's a really good way to go. Proven long-term stuff. Now, Firefly's not the only game in town with their carbon foam. And so the carbon foam is what allows the thing not to sulfate and to become a better battery. Meaning, your car batteries are designed to sit fully charged in a parking lot until you start your car. And we do the exact opposite with our boats. We drain them down all the time and rarely ever recharge them. And so and by the way, our marine marketplace is so small that they're really, for years, nobody's targeted us as consumers because we don't spend enough money. And so we're finally getting, now we've got a big explosion in the RV industry and more boats, and the automobile industry. We got to get them on board to do this, and then we'll get some better batteries out of the deal. So I think Victron did just what I did and chopped up a Firefly battery and said, well, if they can sell a battery for $500, so can we, right? It's not rocket science, it's it's got an anode and a cathode and some electrolyte in there, and they've been building batteries forever. So I think that who knows, once again, wow, if you could wait a couple of years, I think you're going to see more of this technology. But the carbon foam seems really good. The super cyclers on Victron's site, so when I can't sleep, my wife calls it boat porn. What is out there, Could I buy some of these things? And if you look at the data from Victron, that also looks really good. I'm not going to run out right now and drop $2,000 so I can play with them on my boat to see if they're as good as what the lab results are, but the data looks really good. So there we go again, back to let's wait. On the lithium now, this is where it's getting different. So first of all, I love lithium. Okay, we had a Nissan Leaf. If I had a salary that was not a teacher's salary, I'd be driving around a little sporty Tesla probably. Maybe if I didn't own a boat, I could have a Tesla. But anyways, and the technology is incredible. And so we've come a long, long ways. The safety is the big one. We've all seen the videos of boats burning up and people's pants catching on fire on airplanes and everything else and da-da-da. But we're learning, the learning curve is steep and fast, and we know a lot of information. There is only one standard in the marine world that Nigel's told me about is the UL 1973 rating, which is in really industrial testing that batteries go through. They put 200 degrees or 300 degrees to the case of the battery and see if they can set it on fire, and they poke things at it, and and it's a very expensive test. Very expensive because the battery manufacturer can't do it. They have to pay independent testing to have that done. So, and there's only, I think Lithionics is the only one I know right now that meets that requirement. So, but it's really hard to beat these batteries that don't sulfate all of a sudden, that can sit around and are really happy to have whatever charge, and they will, absorb kind of whatever we throw at them. We call them the alternator killers because you start up your motor and it's this giant cavern which will just take everything that you can give it, and your poor alternator's over here going, I've never been abused like this. I'm not designed to run continuously for 2 hours without melting. And so there's a lot of ins and outs with how we're doing it. But I have to be honest, I have some lithium on my boat. I like playing with it. No fires yet. Knock on wood. Maybe I won't put this out there for the whole world to see. My insurance company might not like that. So let's talk about the drop-ins first. And so the magic is, this is a 100 amp hour battery. It used to be $1,000, now it's $800 or whatever. Set it in your boat and everything is going to be perfect. Now, there's a big industry for these batteries. I'm not saying they're bad. If you've got a bass boat and you've got a little electric trolling motor, if you've got an electric outboard on your dinghy, if you're driving around a golf cart back and forth to the marina, good. There's a lot of people that are successfully using drop-in lithium. It doesn't meet ABYC's standard. So, and by that, lithium has some very interesting properties. When you have a cell phone or something, it's got a battery gauge that says 0 to 100%, and they tell you can use 100% of that battery. That's bogus. They just do a better job at marketing what's the usable energy, and it's between here and here. And this has a management system, because if you run lithium dead, below a certain threshold, it will never come back. And if you've got a $3,000, $5,000 bank of batteries and you run them dead, that's an expensive mistake. So the lithium people know, don't let boat owners touch it. They just don't pay enough attention. They're looking at the birds and the whales, and they're sleeping, and the refrigerator stays running, and so we have to have that battery management system that comes in. And but with that becomes the caveat of a whole lot of other problems. If you just have this battery in a box and it all of a sudden says, oh, my voltage is too low, I'm done, I'm going to take my marbles and go home, and it opens up a contactor, well, your alternator on your engine does not like that if it has nowhere else to go. And if you're navigating and all of a sudden and it's dark and your radar and your chart plotter goes boop with no warning, I don't like that. That to me seems like a safety deal, okay? So the difference in lithium is getting that communications piece out. And so a battery lithium management needs to be able to say, okay, well, I'm seeing some unfavorable conditions here, stop charging me. And tell your alternator and tell your battery chargers on board, stop that, okay? I don't want to catch fire. And if it gets too low, it needs to do that. So there's those kind of issues. We've seen installs with 5, 6, 8 lithium batteries, and well, they're just black boxes. And a couple of them were no good. But we had no way of knowing because they're all in one big bank until you unhook them all, probe them. And you know what? The manufacturer of this particular one, I won't say what brand it was awesome. They got a warranty program. Pull it out and give it back. Hard to do from Mexico, but but the problem was the boat owner did not know that they had lost. They just said all of a sudden I wake up in the morning and the batteries are flat. I've lost all my capacity or half of my capacity. That's because some of the batteries went offline. And so the whole idea of just a drop-in being magical and fixing all of what we have isn't there yet. Now, I did see that Renogy, and this is just once again at 2 in the morning, surfing the Amazons, trying to get Jeff Bezos a few more bucks. And I see that they're starting to put Bluetooth communications into those batteries, which should be another step up in the right direction. So a boat owner could be like, okay, I got these 4 batteries, I can see where they're all at, and I can see if one's not carrying its load and what we need to do. Okay, but it still does not meet UL, it does not meet ABYC standards because it can't shut off a charging source. All it can do is open up a contactor. Okay, there's a great article on Marine How-To. It's been in the works for 6 years or more. It's been updated with a lot of talk about this, and it talks about the quality of these. My friend Art back there, we've torn some of these apart to see what's inside. The BMS and the contactors, they say that the rating is quite low for amperage. And so if you put these in your boat and you turn on your bow thruster, boom, and hit them really hard, you can burn out the contactors. They're just not maybe rated for what we do. We're a very strange bunch, us boaters, and we can really tax batteries. So I think that, once again, I'd wait a couple of years before I bought any of those batteries. I would see where the industry's going. I would see if they can crack that nut and get the communications working a little better. It's just, I think there's too many unknowns on that. Now, with that said, we are outfitting King's Pride. We just put 400 amp hours of lithium batteries. That's 400 amp hours of usable on a small, simple sailboat. Love it. So what do you need to do? If you want to go lithium, which, lots of us are starting to do, we can do it. But you need to have a managed system, which means money. It's going to cost you bucks. That's the only way you can do it reliably, is to have an external BMS that will talk to your alternator and talk to your battery charger. Okay? And we have that right now. The wake speed voltage regulator works marvelously. It's got a CAN bus communication for lithium. And Lithionics or Mastervolt, Victron, they all have this communication where they can shut down charging equipment. They give you a high level of monitoring. They give you built-in safety. They're going to give you alerts that say, oh, if you're entering a reef, little anchor, little cut at night, by the way, your batteries just hit 15%. Do you want to keep going? Like there's some built-in safety. And that whole interface with the boat owner, that is an important piece. It's not a black box. So the BMS is really key. And interfacing with the owner, that part of it is what's key. The other thing that I wonder about with lithium is us boat owners, bunch of crackpots, I know. Lithium's like, oh, we will get 5,000 cycles. Ooh, that sounds impressive if you're boating 300 days a year. Yeah, I could do the math. That's, it's a long time. We don't know if we'll get that cycle life, because I've never had a cell phone that made it 5,000 cycles, not even close. So I asked the engineers, well, why do you say your lithium? Well, it's because of the parameters. We're charging this too hard. We're abusing it because it's a consumer index. We want you to buy more. Now, how in the heck am I going to find a marine battery that doesn't want to keep selling me batteries every 5 years, because that has been the game? Okay, now you pay more money, you find that reputable company, you buy your batteries. If they do last for 10 or 15 years, the average person owns a boat 3 to 5 years before you get 3-foot itis, or before you decide this was the dumbest thing you've ever had and you sell it off and buy an RV. You are probably giving money to whoever's going to buy your boat, and they're going to thank you, because you're the one that busted out $30,000 in this, really super fancy battery system they might be getting the benefit from. So I don't know. As we learn stuff with this, back to I think I would wait. Now, it is still awesome, and it works in the lab, in our boats. We've seen it. So don't let me scare you into not spending your money. You might have the perfect boat that you're keeping for 20 years. And if we get the cycle life out of these lithium batteries, the cost probably will work out. And so let's figure it out. This high energy density, also, you get at least 2 to 3 times as much storage for the same space and weight, which when you go talk to the salesman out here, trust me, they're going to tell you all about the weight savings and the space and the on and on. I'm like, unless you're on a 23-foot sailboat, really, how much weight and space do you need to save on a boat? Yes, there are some racers that really, thinking that shaving off 100 pounds is a big deal. But for most of us, I'm like, I carry more than 100 pounds worth of beer on board. I don't think saving a few pounds in my batteries is necessarily something that I really need to worry about. And then we also, with lithium, I think are going to see a big change in how we manage our boats. Back to this. I'm a fan of Apple products. Got one here and one here. Has anybody noticed that my phone doesn't fully charge until 4:30 in the morning? That's because they know these batteries don't like that top end. It's hard on them. We don't like the bottom end. Oh, wait a minute, I have a boat. It's going to be tied to a pier. It's a dock queen for 6 months out of the year, and then I go to Alaska. Where should the batteries be? Should they be fully charged like we've been doing for the last 100 years? I doubt it. They probably should be sitting at half charge. I'd like you to go out there and find a salesman that has a battery charger that says, oh yeah, I'll keep it at half charge until Friday at 4 o'clock because I know you're coming. And then we'll top the batteries up so you can get going. Okay, now, is this going to be? Yes. Guarantee you in a few years I'll be able to get on my little phone here. I'll be like, I'm leaving Seattle, turn on the furnace and charge the batteries. I'm going over there to Roche Harbor, But we're not there yet. And so when are we going to get there? I don't know. Has anybody got a little special, genie bottle or something you could rub and look into a mirror and mirror? But it's coming. And you also may want to check with your insurance company. There have been some denied or people, and it's becoming a thing. Now, I think if you're going with reputable equipment, your insurance company is not going to cancel you. I think if you're trying to build your own bank of lithium and you're buying the cells off from the latest barge that rolled in from who knows where, yeah, if your insurance company knows about that, there's a chance they're going to be like, nope, crackpot, we don't think so. Buy something that's reputable. So those are some definite considerations for the whole idea of batteries. Before I take questions, there's a couple of other things. The importance of float voltage. When I talked about the Northern Marine boat where we cooked the batteries, we had a boat that cooked a set of lifelines, really nice batteries. They didn't have a solar controller. They run the voltage too high.
What kind of batteries?
Lifelines. We've cooked them all. So we've cooked a set of Fireflies. All you have to do is go on your boat and jack the voltage up about a half a volt from where it's supposed to be and leave it sit for a few months, and we can cook batteries. It's super fun. I've got all sorts of pictures in my lab of coming in on a Monday morning and somebody's left the battery on a charger and it's got some, and you know, it's cooking. We try to throw away those battery chargers, but so anyways, what you really want to do, and especially before you buy any new batteries, is you want to go down to your boat and you want to go into the engine room and just leave the boat sitting the way it sits and lived for the last couple of weeks and poke those batteries and find out what is your float voltage. Is it exactly what it's, you know, and then go online and go to whatever, you know, battery manufacturer you have, and it's going to say these batteries should float at 13.3. Between 13.1 and whatever. I can't tell you what your magic number is because there's all these different batteries, but the manufacturers will tell you. And if it's at an elevated voltage, you are prematurely working on wearing out your batteries. More importantly, when you buy the new set of batteries and you have them put in or you put them in yourself, you hook it up to your battery charger and you're like, oh, I just switched from flooded to these really nice AGMs. You want to go in and make sure that, once again, let it sit for the weekend, go down and poke it with a decent multimeter and make sure it's sitting there happy, because you don't want to be the boat owner that gets 2 years out of your batteries and they're cooked. Okay, so float voltage is a serious indicator about that. I've also I've got a tech tip almost done. By the way, I have a whole YouTube channel where we give out tech tips for boat owners about fuel systems and electrical and just what we do up at our school. It's for marketing to get more students, but boat owners get the benefit of it. I have the Tech Tip 15 is about float voltage, and I'm chopping up batteries now. It's almost done, so you'll have to be a subscriber and it'll come out down the road here. But I also put together for my technicians, and I'm just giving it to boat owners as part of that, what's called the battery swap. And it's a PDF, and it goes through the steps of, for you do-it-yourselfers, these are the things that my Greenhorn rookie students sometimes forget. So we made a little quick reference, and we're going to make other quick reference guides. And we thought, well, why don't we just give them to some boat owners? And there's some links to some of my videos in there as well. And it was supposed to be ready right now. So if you're on your phone and you're looking for the download, I work for a government agency, and just because I told them to put it on the website doesn't mean like the world revolves around me, I think is what they said. It's going there. I'm allowed to edit about 80% of my website myself, but I rely on other people for some of it. So, but that'll be something coming as well that I think is good for all of you as you're making your battery decisions. And this is my contact information up there in Anacortes. And so hopefully everybody got some of the messages, got some questions answered. Anybody have anything they want to throw out in the back? Oh, the Tesla. So I don't know, yeah, like Tesla has their Powerwall, which I think is like equivalent to 76 golf cart batteries. And how cool would that be if we could set that into our boat? Nobody's done it yet that I'm aware of, but it's a thing, right? If you could buy that Powerwall and power it up on a boat, it potentially could be good. Oh, how do you accurately measure state of charge on a lithium? It has to come through the BMS, meaning it has to be an integrated system because you can't rely on voltage. You actually have to have an amp hour counter and a computer hooked up. So those Devices like I showed you, the Victron 712, and some of those will tell you how many amp hours you've put in and out, but really the battery management system is the only part that gives you state of charge on lithium. No, well, to some degree they will get a cumulative error. All of our amp hour counters do, and so periodically you do need to fully charge the battery. And so the reason that I don't want to rely on drop-ins is if you look at the computer profile and you dig in what wake speed does, the way that they charge lithium is totally different from lead. They just push as much energy as they can, or they absorb, and there's some exponential curves that they look at, and when the battery starts to say, I'm running out of room, and the current drops off, you have to monitor current, you can't monitor voltage, then it knows like, okay, boom, I can give it this much more and it's going to be full. And so we're relying on computers to do that, and smart equipment. And when I say smart, I just mean expensive. I'm not trying to scare you off, it's just the price of doing business. Yes? According to the world of Mike Beemer, if my iPhone doesn't want to be fully charged, now the manufacturers say it's totally fine to leave them fully charged, and it is. But we know that if you bring those bookends in a little bit, you can get a lot more cycle life. The manufacturer wants you to be happy and give you a product that you paid for. Their best interest isn't in it lasting forever. They would just, they'd like to sell you more product. So I think that on my own system, I like leaving my lithium sit at 50 or 60% and then just pump it up and use that middle because I want maximum cycle life. I'm a nutcase. Don't worry, my wife has told me, I've got a little LED light bulb that's been burning for 35,672 hours, and I'm just keeping track because I want to know when it burns out, The BMSs count cycle life usually. Yeah, the up and down charge, they keep, and it depends on how your BMS is set up too. It doesn't, they may count a certain 90% down to whatever as one cycle. I dropped out of engineering school, electrical engineering school. I found it was way more fun to putz around on boats than. So when we talk about lithium batteries, so the question is, what's the difference in lithium phosphate? Almost exclusively, the ones that are empirically safe and we understand are lithium iron phosphates. The LiFePO, they call them, that's lithium iron and phosphate put together. But there's also, and so that's what we typically can buy for the marine industry right now. And so they're changing all of these. And by the way, I forgot I was up there all warm and fuzzy about lead being 95% recyclable. If you like the planet and you read about lithium, that might change your mind. 0% recyclable. Some of the cobalts and the other things that are really rare and hard to find are not in our country, and they don't treat people very well who mine them. There's been a couple of articles released, and so that could be changing. They write an article, and 2 years later, maybe it's better than what I know. So, but it's a consideration. We can't recycle because they have to be so pure so that they don't catch fire and stuff that they can't recycle those things. I'm really hopeful that the automobile industry and the lead industry cracks the nut and we can keep using our lead-based batteries, but get more storage out of them, abuse them more, and not have them die every 5 years. Other questions? Yes? Okay, so the question is experience or opinions with these little power packs that have like an inverter and a lithium battery, and you can charge them up at home. And inherently safe because you're not charging it on your boat. You're just using it as a storage unit. It's going to, put out, for short term, might work for some boaters. I want to keep a freezer running for 3 days while I go on a fishing trip. Probably totally fine. But take it home and charge it on a concrete floor. My uncle burned his house down charging lithium batteries on a workbench. Batteries. Oh, no, I think he just wanted to sell you batteries. Yeah, if you don't want to mix new and old batteries together. Batteries work as a bank. And an analogy is like if you have a couple of old construction workers and you bring in a new 18-year-old, the new one's going to do all the work and the older ones are not. And so that new battery, which was super fresh, gets pounded down really easily. So if you design a battery bank and you need 400 amp hours, you need 6 golf carts or 4 golf cart batteries. You want to buy them all at once, treat them as a package, take care of them. get all their life out of them. You don't want to, and same thing, if you get a battery that goes bad and the bank's only 4 years old, you really don't want to just throw a new one in the mix because they don't play well. With lead, electricity regulates itself very easily because electrons are lazy and they just go, and when you have a nice even bank, that works well. But when you change and that's also why you can't put, a nice new Firefly battery with a dyno battery. They just don't mix well together. Maybe, so yeah, the question is, how do I get to 1,000 amp hours from 600 if I don't have the space? And you're talking about increasing solar. If we can increase other ways to keep our batteries charged, then we don't need as much storage. That is an option. I don't know right now if the lead industry is going to get there fast enough, or if you're going to have to go to lithium if you need twice as much energy. And if you're watching it on a daily basis, you're really going to find out what you need. At the cost of some of these installations, if you're a sailboat, you could use a hydro generator. We've got really good alternators now that where it used to put out 100 amps, you can now, at 12 volts, we can now go up to 300. And yes, your diesel mechanic's going to tell you you're going to wear out that motor if you just use it to charge your batteries, but I've never met a recreational boater that's really wore out an engine yet. So it might be way more cost effective to be like, I'm going to just suck it up and listen to this engine run for an hour a day and live with my 600 amp hours that I have. So each boat is definitely unique in how we're going to run and operate it. And I get it. There's people that like, no, I'm going to sail to Hawaii for 20 days and I am not going to start the engine. Can we do that? Yes. Just a different system that we build and modify. Solar panel, Nigel did a class for us here at the boat show on solar, a couple of hours worth of solar. So to synopsis it in 2 minutes is difficult, but solar is awesome. Solar pays for itself very quickly. That's so much better for your batteries. Once again, you've only got so much real estate to put the solar up there. If you are going to go with semi-flexibles, you got to spend the bucks. I bought some of the cheaper Amazon ones, 3 years at most, 2 years. You got to go with a high quality panel for the semi-flexibles. And a really good solar controller is going to make a difference too, to make sure you're charging your batteries properly. Solar and the batteries. Solar is great for your batteries. Oh, you have to set it up right. Yeah. The boat that we had that the solar cooked the batteries, they didn't put a decent controller in it. So your solar panels, a 12-volt solar panel is up at 18 to 20 volts. So if you don't control that, cooks the batteries. So it's just making the system work. But we love solar. Even in the Northwest, it works really well, especially in the summer. Long, cool days, perfect conditions for solar. So. I'm going to have to cut it down here. We got another show coming on. Thank you for watching. Go to cruiserscollege.org if you're interested in coming up and getting more education and more classes. If you know anybody who wants to learn to fix boats, tell them to come see us. That's what we do.